Hello and welcome. In this session of eGurukul and DBMCI, we are going to talk about the FMG or MCI recall questions of the last August 2020. And in this, we are going to talk about the ENT questions. So, I'm your ENT faculty, Dr. Sanjay Agrawal, an educator, and we'll start straight away with the first question. Now, the first question says, the pharyngeal pouch is located between which of the following? A. Superior constrictor and middle constrictor. B. Middle and inferior constrictor. C. Thyropharyngeus and cricopharyngeus. And D. Thyroid and cricoid. Now, before I start, let me tell you that we get these questions from you, from your feedback. So sometimes the question may not be exactly correct and the choices may not be exactly correct. So what we do is I use my own experience to complete the question. So it may not be exactly the same reproduction, but yeah, by and large, the question is the same and the concepts are the same. Pharyngeal pouch, when we say there are many types of pharyngeal pouch, the most common pharyngeal pouch, I'm sure you know, is the Jenker's diverticulum. I'll talk about that. But before that, what is the answer? What do you think is the correct answer? The answer is C. It's between thyropharyngeus and cricopharyngeus. I'm sure you know both are fibers muscles are, these are two muscles of inferior constrictor. There are three types of constrictor in the pharynx. Superior constrictor, middle constrictor, inferior constrictor. And inferior constrictor is divided into two parts. One is called thyropharyngeus, that comes from the thyroid cartilage, and one is called cricopharyngeus, which comes from the cricoid cartilage. From the name you understand, cricoid to pharynx, thyroid to pharynx. Now the problem with these two muscles are that they are not aligned together in the same direction. They are not running like this in the same direction. One is horizontal and one is a little inclined. One is horizontal, one is inclined. So when you have two muscles together in different directions, then there is a gap between the two. There is a weak area, and that weak area between these two muscles is called Killian's dehiscence. It's a very popular MCQ, very popular name. So Killian's dehiscence is the weak area between these two muscles. The other name for this area is gateway of tears. Tears, they get torn, the tissue gets torn, gateway. So it's a weak area. And sometimes the mucosa prolapses through this and forms a pouch. And this pouch is called Jenker's diverticulum. Right. So it is talking about this one, pharyngeal pouch, and the answer is thyropharyngeus and cricopharyngeus. So look at this diagram. This is the thyroid cartilage and this is the cricoid cartilage. Right. Now this muscle, can you see this muscle comes from the thyroid cartilage to the pharynx, thyropharyngeus muscle, thyropharyngeus, and this muscle comes from the cricoid cartilage, it is cricopharyngeus muscle. And this pouch is that pouch that comes between the two muscles, and this pouch is called Jenker's diverticulum. This is Jenker's diverticulum. Right. So simple question. And this is not a new question or this is not an uncommon question. This is a very popular question. We teach in all our lectures this one. So it was not a tough question. What I'm trying to say is. Next question. Syphilis affects which part of the nose? Is it bony septum, lateral wall of the nose, floor of the nose, vestibule of the nose? What is the correct answer? The correct answer is bony septum. Now again, it's a very popular question. Usually they have changed the question. Usually they ask you, you know what they have been asking in the past, that which is the only bacteria The question they ask is, which of the following pathogens, bacteria actually, affect or cause perforation of bony septum? Now this is how we have been asking in the past in the question also, and the answer is syphilis. This is the answer, and they'll give you lupus, tuberculosis and all that. Syphilis is the correct answer. See, bony septum is infected by tuberculosis. Now they have changed that syphilis affects which part of the nose most commonly, and bony septum. So again, it's the same question that have been asked in the past. It's a simple question. All you have to do is you have to apply your knowledge. They will change the question. This is called twisting the question. So you cannot always expect to have the same question exactly, same language, everything. Not possible. Now syphilis, we all know, is congenital syphilis. Then there is primary syphilis, there is secondary syphilis, there is tertiary syphilis, isn't it? Different stages of syphilis. Congenital syphilis is also common in the nose, and it presents as snuffles. How does the congenital syphilis very commonly present? Snuffles in nose. Snuffles is discharge and the child has a tendency to pull it up. That's called snuffle. So if a small child, newborn child, has a lot of snuffling, that syphilis is a very popular cause. But this is congenital. Acquired syphilis, after birth, nasal tissues are affected either in the secondary stage or in the tertiary stage. Tertiary stage is more common, and they have what is called gumma. They are swellings. You must be knowing gummas from your skin. They are gummas in the nose, but these gummas can affect any part of the nose. There is no specific that syphilis in the tertiary stage, the gummas of syphilis will only affect the bony septum. No, it can affect lateral wall, floor, septum, any part of the nose, but most commonly it affects the bony septum. And that's why this question is very, very important. And often it causes septal perforation, which is in this question, it causes perforation, septal perforation. So that's why it's a very important question. So it was not a new question. It was not a difficult question. It is an expected question. So again, I'm saying this because I've been hearing that people say that this was a very tough paper, lot of clinicals. So from the ENT point of view, it was not very tough. Of course, they did not give you a very, very common questions, but they did not give you something which is never asked, which has never been asked. They give you less commonly asked question, but you cannot call this tough. Okay, third question. Hypopharyngeal carcinoma, which involves the same side with no extension to the opposite side, is what? T3N0M0, T4B N0M0, T1N0M0, or T4A N0M0. Hypopharynx, pharynx, but first what is your answer? The answer is T1N0M0. Now pharynx has three parts: nasopharynx, oropharynx, and laryngopharynx. Laryngopharynx is further divided into two parts: larynx and hypopharynx. Now in the hypopharynx, larynx is very important. We all know a lot of things in the larynx. It's a very important topic. A lot of questions in anatomy and disease. So everybody studies. But hypopharynx is very uncommon. But this time they asked you two questions from the hypopharynx. This Jenkins diverticulum we have just done, Jenkins diverticulum, actually that question is from the hypopharynx. That pharyngeal pouch, pharyngeal pouch comes. So this is a question actually from the hypopharynx. And now they have asked you carcinoma stage actually in the hypopharynx. So once again it proves that they have asked you topics which are less commonly asked. They have not asked for question from the nasopharynx, oropharynx, larynx, but they asked for question from the hypopharynx. Again, now hypopharyngeal carcinoma are seen in most commonly in pyriform fossa and postcricoid area or posterior pharyngeal wall, right? So one of the three areas. Now it says the tumor is confined to the same area, same site. It has not extended onto the opposite side. So what stage is it? I said stage 1 because there is no lymph node, so N0 has to be there. As it is, all of the choices are carrying N0 and M0. So it's mainly T. T is tumor size. T stands for tumor size. So question is about tumor size, not about stage of tumor. And the answer is because the tumor is confined to same site, it is not extended anywhere. It is the most initial stage of the tumor, and therefore it is T1 tumor. Right. Now, if you look at this staging of T1, see this is hypopharyngeal tumor staging. Tumor limited to one subsite, so it is not extended to the other side. One subsite of hypopharynx or less than 2 centimeter is T1. So this is what we said. If it is more than one subsite, it goes to the other side, adjacent site. See, look here, adjacent site. Then it becomes T2. Then T3 is either 4 centimeter or it is fixation of the hemilarynx. Now it is larynx gets involved and the larynx vocal cord cannot vibrate, it fixed T3. And 4A and 4B are very similar to the laryngeal carcinoma also. Laryngeal carcinoma 4A, 4B is very similar to hypopharyngeal carcinoma 4A, 4B, same. Where the tumor is confined within, which the tumor invades the thyroid and cricoid cartilages, goes out of the larynx. And T5, when it goes to the distant area like prevertebral fascia, carotid and mediastinum. So this is same in larynx also. Okay, it's very similar. So because the tumor is confined to same side, it is not extended. So obviously it is T1 carcinoma of the hypopharynx. The main complaint is dysphagia. Difficulty in swallowing is the main complaint. MRI and biopsy has to be done, and radiotherapy plus chemotherapy are the best options in the treatment of hypopharyngeal carcinoma. So hypopharynx suddenly has become very important from your exam point of view. Next one. Reservoir sign and pain near the mastoid antrum is seen in A. Mastoiditis, B. Acute otitis media, C. Otitis externa, D. CSO. I think this is simple. Now, the answer is A, of course, mastoiditis. Now, reservoir sign is seen in two diseases. It is seen in ASOM and mastoiditis. Otitis media. So this is acute otitis media, which can be called ASOM. So reservoir sign is seen in both, but in ASOM it is middle ear infection. Pain is in the ear. In this, pain is in mastoid area, and because the pain is near mastoid antrum, so obviously it has to be mastoiditis. In these two, there is no reservoir sign. So in mastoiditis, we have reservoir sign, then we have lighthouse sign also, then we have ironed out mastoid, and if you have attended my lecture, you'll saw that every lecture I tell you mastoiditis have these signs. So it's not an uncommon question, it's a very common question. It's a very simple question actually, nothing difficult. I hope you got it right. Okay. Then next one. Now this is an image of the nasopharynx, and they're asking you the this circle, yellow circle marked area, basically endoscopy of the nose, nasopharynx, and they're asking to identify this area. This area is, see this arrow, this is, which is here, you can't see on this side, it is cut. This is eustachian tube opening. Then behind this tube, this bulge, this is torus tubaris, and behind this one is fossa of Rosenmuller. So this is fossa of Rosenmuller C. Now fossa of Rosenmuller is important because it is most common site of nasopharyngeal carcinoma. And last year in your exam MCI, they had asked you the most common site of nasopharyngeal carcinoma, and the answer was fossa of Rosenmuller. So anybody who had attended last year or checked last year's question would have liked to see what is fossa of Rosenmuller, may have seen some images, so for them it becomes very easy. However, I show this in not the same diagram but this area in all my lectures. When I draw it differently. I draw it like this, right? And I say this is the nasopharynx, this is nasopharynx, there is a eustachian tube here, see this is eustachian tube opening, then I draw a swelling here, this is torus tubaris, and I always say that behind this torus tubaris, this area is fossa of Rosenmuller. So again, we have done it, and we have done it differently actually, but it's the same thing. So a little bit of inquisitiveness. So this is not a new question, only they have shown endoscopy instead of an image or a diagram. We show you diagrams, they have shown an endoscopic image from the front. So not a difficult question at all. And even otherwise, everybody knows this name, fossa of Rosenmuller. Everybody knows this name, those who have studied, because it is the most common site of nasopharyngeal carcinoma. So extremely important question. Next one. Now they're shown this kind of image of a child with a swelling in the lower lip area. So this is a lower lip area, and they ask you what are the following is this? Is it it is usually a retention cyst, or it is extravasation is not that common, it is transluminal, all are true. It is usually a retention cyst, extravasation is not that common, it is transluminal, all are true. I think in the actual question the choices were different, but the concept is the same. So even if the choices were different, and if I tell you answer in this one, you still get it correct. In this the answer is C, but I think the choices were different, so whatever, doesn't matter. Now this is a mucocele. A mucocele. Mucocele is a mucus filled cyst in the lower lip of a child. Now mucocele in the lip are two types. One is extravasation cyst, one is retention cyst. So there are two types of cyst, either extravasation, both cannot be there, it has to be one of the two, right? Now in the lower lip of child, extravasation is cyst is more common, and because in the image they are shown lower lip of the child, so it is likely to be this one. Now what is the difference between retention cyst and extravasation cyst? So suppose this is the gland, salivary gland in the lip, this is a duct, one more salivary, same salivary gland, duct, and saliva secretion will flow out of the duct like this, we understand. Now sometimes what happens, there is damage of the duct like this, the duct gets damaged like this, and through this damaged area, this secretion flows out. This is called extravasation. It comes out of the tube, extravasation. It forms a swelling, and when it comes out of the duct and collects around it, the tissue grows. The normal tissue grows around it, and it begins to look like a mucosa. This tissue is not a capsule. A capsule is not formed. It's it's a it's tissue growth. And therefore this is called pseudocapsule. This is called pseudocapsule. So extravasation cyst will have a pseudocapsule, not a true capsule, which means not a true capsule because it's not a capsule, it is a tissue growth. So this is extravasation cyst. Whereas what is retention cyst? If the duct gets blocked due to something, if the duct gets blocked, then the secretion keeps on accumulating. There is a lot of pressure in the secretion, pool of secretion, and because of this secretion collection, the duct will grow, balloon out, and the secretion collects here. The fluid has retained in the duct. The fluid had managed to. Now this is called retention mucosal or retention cyst. So these are the main difference between the two, right? Now they are all filled with saliva, and that's why they are both are transluminal or transillumination, which means transillumination test is positive. So obviously it is not a retention cyst, as I said, and it says extravasation is not common, but it is actually common, as I said. Okay, and because it's filled with almost transparent fluid like saliva, so if you pass light from one side, the light will cross through and will shine on the other side. The other side gets illuminated, so transillumination test is positive. Okay, then a professional trumpet blower presents with left-sided neck swelling. Following is the radiographic finding of this patient. What is the most likely diagnosis? So if you have a trumpet blower with neck swelling, you don't have to see the diagram also. If they say trumpet blower has a neck swelling, it has to be a laryngosal. It has to be a laryngosal. And so without even image, you know it is laryngosal. And every lecture I tell you this. Laryngosal, there is a neck swelling, and it is seen in trumpet blowers. I give the examples also. Trumpet blowers, pom, 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 like I always say, people who have to blow pom, 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 they are trumpet blowers, they will have laryngosal. So very straightforward question, nothing here. Only they give you image maybe to confuse you, but if you do not even look at the image, you know it is laryngosal. Laryngeal cyst is in the vocal cord, not in the larynx. This is the neck swelling. This is in the vocal cord. Thyroglossal cyst is midline swelling. This is side swelling. This is midline neck swelling, and it cannot be epiglottis, of course. Epiglottitis is not a swelling. Epiglottitis is an infection, simple infection, which is seen in children. So children cannot be trumpet blowers, and none of them have anything to do with trumpet blowers. Rest of the three, they have no relation with trumpet blowers. So very clearly, A is the correct answer. I'll show you a few other images of this patient. So this is how a laryngosal may look like, this swelling. This is the X-ray of the another view X-ray of the laryngosal. See this one, and this is a scan showing the laryngosal connected with the larynx. There is a connection with the larynx. There is a connection between the larynx and the laryngosal. Air goes from the larynx into the laryngosal, which is described as, what is laryngosal? Laryngosal is a ballooning or dilation of saccule of larynx. This is the definition, ballooning or dilation of saccule of larynx is the definition of laryngoscopy. Okay. Next question. Gold standard investigation for FES. FES stands for functional endoscopic sinus surgery. And the answer is CT scan. Because sinuses are made up of bones, we all know. They are made up of bones, multiple bones, and bone is best seen on CT scan. So if you want to see any bony structure like sinuses, then CT scan is the best investigation. MRI is for, this is for bones. MRI is for soft tissue, brain, nerves, you know, all that, cyst and all this. X-rays, compared to CT scan and MRI, X-ray is never a good investigation because it will never give you so much details as a CT scan or MRI can see. And PET scan is for cancer, carcinomas, where you, or carcinoma which is hidden carcinoma, you can say that when you cannot, you suspect a carcinoma but you can't find, then you do PET scan, right? So again, I don't think this was a difficult question. Then a boy fell down while playing and the nose is deviated but septum was found normal. What is the next step? Lower the edema, then close the reduction after 7 days. Close reduction with an automatical swelling decreases. Septorhinoplasty, open reduction. So some people might think this is a clinical question, but clinical question, they don't give a diagnosis. They are giving a diagnosis. Nose is deviated but septum is normal. So if they give a diagnosis, then rest of the history and everything is useless. So this is not a clinical question. This is a straightforward simple question that if due to fall there is a nose deviated but septum is normal, what is the next line of treatment? What is the next thing you do? That's what they ask. And the correct answer is A, lower the edema and then do close reduction after 7 days. Okay. Now what is the meaning of close reduction and open reduction? Open is you cut, remove the tissue, and under direct vision you do the fixation of the bones. You fix the bone under direct vision. That is called open because you open the nose. Close is you don't give any incision. You just push and pull the nose and then align it and then put a cast over it. So that's closed reduction. In the nose, closed reduction is always preferred because in open reduction you have to give an incision on the nose, somewhere in the nose. And I'm sure you understand that nose has a high cosmetic value. One of the most important structure cosmetically is the nose. When you look at somebody's face, nose is the first thing that comes into mind. It's right in front, center of the face, and it's jetting out. So it's like coming onto your face, nose. So nose is the first thing that you see in anybody. So nose has a lot of aesthetic value or cosmetic value, you can say. And that's why if there is a fracture of the nose, deviation of the nose, then you have to do reduction. That means fixation. Reduction means fixation of that fracture, right? Now the problem with fracture is, or deviation is, that the moment there is a fracture, it gets edematous. There is edema around it. Now the problem with edema is that if there is edema, there is a swelling, and nose bones are very small bones, very tiny bone, then you cannot make the correct assessment how much deviation is there, how much fixation is required. So you cannot make a correct assessment, and that's why you should wait for 6 to 7 days so that the edema subsides. When the edema subsides 7 days, then you can see the bones that fracture and everything very nicely. You can see it details, and when you do the reduction, you can do very precisely. You can do the precise reduction. If you try to do the reduction immediately along with the edema, then you cannot be very precise. And after the edema settles down, if the patient realizes that my nose has not become 100% correct, they will never be happy. They will always complain. In case of nose, any cosmetic surgery for that matter, you have to be 100% correct. If somebody's hand is broken and then you fix and it is not 100% correct, they will never mind if it is 80, 90%, 90% correct, because it doesn't matter cosmetically. If they can function, the hand is functioning okay, they will never complain. Same is the case with the leg. But facial bones, nose especially, they are very, very particular about the cosmetic. Septum, they don't mind because septum is inside. Septum, if you don't make very correction properly, then it doesn't make too much of difference because it has no cosmetic value. It is inside. Nobody is going to look into your nose. Where is the septum? That's why I say they have said very clearly, septum was found normal. So this is a clue. They are saying that they are looking for the cosmetic part because septum is not a cosmetic structure. Nose, nasal bone is cosmetic structure. That's why lower the edema 7-8 days and then do the reduction. Right. Next one. I think that's all. So I hope this was useful to you. Thank you for joining, and please work very, very hard for your exams because there is no shortcut to success. If you want to succeed in any exam, you have to work very, very hard. Those who have not cleared this exam for whatever reason, your next exam is around the corner, just December. So you got less than 3 months. So you cannot afford to waste the time. Work very, very hard so that next year we can all celebrate together. Thank you once again. All the best.